This is a very boring book cover. It has the shadow of a noose, which is sort of interesting. You have your knots and crosses down at the bottom. One of them's kind of bloody, but it's just a bland cover. That was from 1995. This is a book from 2022. Was the cover artist even trying to make the book cover interesting? What about interesting book covers? Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg. Today I am doing a not exactly tag video. This video idea came from Grammaticus Books, my top 10 favorite book covers. And in that video, Grammaticus Books showed you 10 of his favorite book covers. And while he did not exactly tag other people, he did encourage other creators to show their 10 favorite book covers. And how can I resist? I like my old pulpy paperbacks with their tawdry book covers. I am not going to call this my favorite book covers, but I'll say this is 10 fantastic book covers, of which you will not likely see again in today's society, because most of my book covers are a little bit older, with one exception. Now, the order I will show these books in is roughly publication order of when the paperback came out with the cover. To start off with, I will show you one of the greatest pulp covers of all time, in my humble opinion, and this is I, the Jury by Mickey Spillane. This is the Signet 1952 edition, and the cover artist is Kimmel. I had to look up the cover artist on the internet because it was not listed on the paperback anywhere inside. And just look at this storyline. There is your beautiful blonde. She is undressing, and you have the man pointing a gun at her. Why? There is a story behind this cover. If you read the book, you will recognize the scene. And I just love this style of paperback that shows a little bit of a story in the cover art. Next, I'm going to show you a book that definitely would not get published today. This is Kiss My Fist by James Hadley Chase, originally published by Eton in 1952. I do not know the cover artist. But again, this cover tells you a story of domestic abuse. And yes, I know domestic abuse is wrong, but it can make for a good story. And in this story, apparently there is this bad man who abuses his lady friends. And punching a woman in today's society will not make it on the cover of a paperback book. I have not read this book, so I don't know if the story is any good, although I have read a few other James Hadley Chase books, and they're pretty darn good pulp crime novels. But just take a look at that cover. There is a little bit of an illustration on the back. He's definitely being mean to his lady friend again. Strip for Murder by Richard S. Prather. Fawcett Paperbacks, 1955. Unknown cover artist. They allowed this sort of thing in paperbacks in 1955. You will not see the like of this again, unless society changes very differently. This book is part of the Shel Scott mystery series, and you know, it was okay. Not the best mystery story I ever read, but if you were in a bookstore in 1955 and you saw this book cover, I think you would be very tempted to pick up this book. I'm not going to read you the back of the cover, but I will say that this story is set in a nudist colony. So Shell Scott, the detective, has to go in dressed only in a pistol. The Magus by John Fowles, Dell paperback 1967. Artist just is listed as Livoti. Now this is a literary novel for the most part. Some people think this is a salacious literary novel, and maybe they are correct. It is about a World War II veteran who goes to a Greek island and meets a mysterious man who may or may not have mysterious powers. And of course, there is a lovely lady who will show off her skimpy outfit. And there in the back is your goat-headed man, a symbol of Pan or something. But this is a cover again. If you were in 1967, I think it would draw a certain type of reader. Who is the scantily dressed woman? Who is that goat man? Now, I have read The Magus before, at least twice. It's a pretty darn good book. This edition of the paperback is his original version of The Magus. John Fowles then did a stylistic revision. Not a whole lot of story changing, but this is the original. And this cover, it's very simple, but I do like it. Spawn of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft and others. This is a Ballantine paperback from 1971, and the artist is Gervasio. And this is a collection of Cthulhu mythos short stories. They include stories by Lovecraft and others. And this just has a very curious style to it. You have these weird man, this crab-like being, and as you take the book, you notice that the entire book, including the back cover, includes the cover art. And I think that is just a fantastic tradition that is not done very often nowadays. Is this technically great art? I'm not going to say that it is, but it's good for a book cover, which is why I like it a lot. Now I'm going to show you a great series. This is the Richard Blade series by Geoffrey Lord. Geoffrey Lord was a house name. There were at least 4 or 5 authors writing under this pseudonym. And this is essentially a secret agent, a James Bond type of character, who in every book gets transported to a different dimension. And lots of these dimensions had lots of nasty monsters and not a lot of high technology. And some of these societies were like what I like to call clothing optional societies, because on a lot of these covers, Richard Blade is buck naked, often defending a buck naked lady from something truly horrible. And is it great art? No, it's not great art, but it is identifiable as a part of a story. It's something that would intrigue a reader. And I will show you a few different Richard Blade covers. This one here, again, shows you that style where Richard Blade is buck naked, and there's another buck naked lady. Now this cover in the Richard Blade one is a little bit different. He is clothed, at least in trousers, but he's fighting some TV monster. And this lady, while also clothed, looks like she is sexually excited by this TV. These are why these covers in this series are kind of interesting. Again, maybe not great art, but they pull the eye in and make you want to read it. Now we come to Alligator by Shelly Katz, published by Dell in 1977. I could not find a cover artist. Now, this front cover is kind of boring. You just see an alligator face. The texture of the book is raised, so it feels a little bit like a alligator skin. And here's the very odd choice on the back of the book. You have full cover art of the alligator in the Okefenokee swamp and the two men who are trying to not get eaten by the alligator. Should this be a great book with a giant alligator? Yes, it should. This book is absolute crud. There's not a whole lot of alligator action in Alligator, which is very disappointing. But look at that cover art. Again, very intriguing. Crooked Tree by Robert C. Wilson, originally published by Berkley in 1981. I could not find a cover artist. Is this an interesting cover? You got the tree, you got what looks like a bear, and the cover art continues a little bit on the back, not entirely, but what really makes this a great book is that is a step back cover. And you notice that bear has a naked female body, a bare naked lady with a fist in someone's body. As for a horror novel, this was decent. It was set on an Indian reservation, I believe, in Michigan. It's still available in print, but not with this fantastic cover. One of my all-time favorite books, A Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. This is the Grove Press edition from 1981, and the artist is just listed as San Juan. And you notice there are a lot of characters on this cover. And if you've read the book, you can identify each character on the cover, which was what makes this a very fascinating piece of cover art. You have Ignatius Riley. He's a little thin in this cover, but you have all the other fantastic characters in this book, including the parrot. And as I compare and contrast, look at Ignatius Riley on this cover. He is more appropriately fat, and you do have the parrot, but it just does not have that oomph. You get a little bit of the character, but where is the rest of the character? Where is the little bit of story in the cover? This cover has a lot more story than this cover, which is why this is a fantastic piece of book cover art. The Morgow Rises by Peter Tremayne, published by Sphere, 1982, unknown cover artist. Well, this is a horror novel, of course, because you have some sort of giant worm or maggot with very, very sharp teeth eating a lady. Now, if you are the type of person who likes to read horror novels and you saw this cover in the bookstore, I think, again, you would be tempted to pick it up and see if this is the type of story that you would want to read. I did read this book at least 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. It's not really a very good horror story, but man, look at that cover art. There was a lot of work that went into horror paperbacks back in the day that just made them really fantastic. I'll show you a bonus. Blood Letter by Warren Newton Beath. Again, imagine yourself browsing through a bookstore or a paperback rack and you saw this cover. Wouldn't you be tempted to pick this up and learn what this vampire was doing to this pretty much naked lady? Sins of the Flesh by Dawn and Jay Davis, originally published by Tor in 1989, and the artists are Mark and Stephanie Gerber. Well, if you look at this cover, it's kind of bland. You got a hideous face somewhere beneath wood, and you notice its hand. But what makes this cover one of the best horror covers ever is that it's a step back cover. And you can pull back and you can see this beastie in his full, nasty glory. And look at his fingers. His fingers continue to the other side of the paperback. Now, if I saw this in a paperback rack in 1989, I would buy this book immediately. Have I read this book? No, I haven't. One of the reasons I have not read it is that I don't want to damage this book. It's kind of rare. But fortunately, I have a Kindle edition of this book, which was only $1.99. So one day, I'm definitely going to read this book and see if the story can match up to the cover art. I have my doubts. I have Gunwork by David J. Sow, published by Hard Case Crime in 2008. And the artist is Joe DeVito. Now, Hard Case Crime deliberately republished some older crime and pulp paperbacks and gave them new pulpy covers. This book was original for 2008, and it has one of these great old style covers that definitely do tell a story. You've got your beautiful redhead in her low-cut gown, and you have the thug with a gun. Pretty interesting. But basically, I could have hauled out a bunch of other Hard Case Crime paperbacks and shown them, and most of their covers are pretty good along this line. But this one, this cover, has a spoiler. And you will not notice the spoiler until after you read the book. And even then, you may not notice the spoiler because it's really rather subtle. And this artist really gets a lot of kudos for having read the book or having the plot element told to him and including something special on the cover for people who are attentive to read and look and discover. Is it a good book? Yeah. For a modern hard case crime, this was one of my favorites. So go ahead and try to find some more hard case crime. You can see them behind me. I have the full set of the original publications, and they're all pretty darn good. That is the end of my 10 fantastic book covers. If you are paying close attention, I have a little more than 10 in this video. Oh well, the BookTube police will just come and have to arrest me. If you are interested in showing your top 10 favorite covers, or just show a bunch of fantastic covers that you own, go ahead and do it. The only real stipulation made by Grammaticus is only one book per cover artist, and you have to physically own the book to show it in this video. Those are pretty darn easy rules. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.